Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Truth Spot. Today is part 2 of the mini-series that I've titled Believe. And so as promised in part 1, today I'm going to talk about what do we need to believe about Jesus. First, we need to believe that Jesus is the Christ and that he is the Son of God, according to John chapter 20, verse 31. What does it mean that Jesus is the Christ? Christ is a title, okay? And John tells us early in his gospel what this title means. In chapter 1, he records a talk and an encounter between two brothers, Andrew and Simon Peter. Andrew had just seen Jesus and he runs to find his brother. He tells his brother, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ, according to John 1:41. Christ is a title that is synonymous with Messiah. Messiah is a term that goes all the way back to the Old Testament, okay? The Old Testament, it focuses on one who is called the Messiah, whom God would send. And so by the time that Jesus came on the scene, the nation of Israel, they had been waiting for a long time, centuries, for this Messiah to come. And so as we walk through the Gospel of John in this series, Believe, we'll see this expected climate Jesus entered into. He came to a people who were waiting for the Christ. And so when John identifies Jesus as the Christ, John is not just saying a person just needs to acknowledge that Jesus is the one that's called the Messiah. But he's saying that one must believe that Jesus is the one who would fulfill all of the promises that God made to his people. The promises of God, they tie the entire Old Testament together, and they all center on a person, okay? The Old Testament is not a collection of stories, but it's just one story, okay? It's a single story of God creating man, man rebelling against God, and God sending his son to reconcile man back to God. John is saying you must believe Jesus is that person. Jesus is the promise keeper, and all of God's promises come true in Jesus. And so what are some of the promises that God fulfilled in Jesus, okay? So the first promise is found in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Mankind had just sinned against God, and Adam and Eve, they are learning about the consequences of their sin. And so in the midst of this punishment, God promised to send a son, born from the seed of a woman, who would fix everything that sin had broken. Secondly, in Psalm 2, we find a promise that the Christ will end all injustice and rebellion. Kings, leaders who oppress people and who make a mockery of justice, all right? But Christ will come and he'll put an end to their entire reign, okay? He will judge them for their wickedness, and only those who run to him will find mercy. In Isaiah chapter 53, which is just known as the Gospel of the Old Testament, we find the promise of a suffering servant, God's servant, the Christ, who will be perfectly righteous. He will be the only person who never sins, but he will be punished and killed. He will willingly offer his life as a payment for our sins, and he takes the guilty's punishment so that the guilty can be declared innocent. What's the next promise? The prophet Daniel recorded a vision of God ruling in heaven in Daniel chapter 7. In this vision, there's one who looks like a man who comes before God, and God gives him a kingdom that never ends, okay? His eternal kingdom is also universal. This kingdom includes people from every tribe, every tongue, every nation. And so when John says that we need to believe that Jesus is the Christ, he's making a sweeping statement. We need to believe that Jesus is the one who will fix all that's been broken, the one who will end tyranny and oppression, and he's the one who will reign forever as King and as Lord. And he is the one who gave his life so that we who are guilty can be forgiven and be reconciled back to God. We also need to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, okay? John not only makes the claim that Jesus is the promised Messiah, but also that Jesus is God. Only someone divine could do all that God promised in the Old Testament. Only someone divine could be trusted with the absolute power and authority promised to the Messiah. Only someone divine could be the perfect sacrifice and payment for the sins of the world. If Jesus were not divine, then he could not be the fulfillment of all the promises that God has made. So, thanks for tuning in to my new series, part 2 of Believe. In part 3, I'm going to answer the question, what does it mean to believe, all right? Do me a favor, please. Like this video, subscribe, or follow, depending whatever platform you're watching on. And please, share this video with someone. After all, Jesus is for everybody. God bless you. Until part 3, peace.